Hello, everyone. Welcome to the live stream for today. Hopefully, everyone is doing good out there. Doing a quick mic check. Hopefully, everyone can hear me out there. Definitely excited. Looking forward to getting into this. I see already some chat going on. I'm super excited. So I got my notes ready. Got my chat open up. So feel free to ask any and all questions that hit your mind. If you have questions about the things that I'm going to be talking about today, definitely put those down in the chat. If you have any questions, if you're watching this after the fact on YouTube, after the live, the recording, please do the same thing. I'm definitely going to answer as many questions as possible. Today, as you can see, I'm going to be talking about the 5 biggest questions that new real estate investors have. You know, as a new investor, you're going to have questions that there's going to seem like there's no answer to. But today, though, I figured I'm going to sit down and answer 5 of the biggest questions that I've seen over my short career. I've talked with my mentor. She's given me some questions that she hears that she hears all the time. Definitely excited to share all this knowledge with you. Today, we're going to get into the first question. Like I said, if you have any other questions during this live stream, please feel free to put them down in the chat. If you need more clarity on something, feel free to go ahead and ask. So the first question: how much or how do you get money to actually start investing in real estate? Hear this question all the time. This is probably going to be the most common question in real estate in general, not just when it comes to buying an investment property, but just your primary home. How much money does it really take to start? Well, let's answer that because it can seem impossible. 20% down is what is going to be required for most investment properties, sometimes 25%. It can seem like a huge ask to say, hey, I need $60,000. This is the bank talking. I need $60,000, $70,000 for you to be able to purchase this investment property. And that's crazy. That is a lot of money. But there's definitely ways around that. So let's talk through a few. If you see me looking down, it's because I got my notes. I got a ton of notes. Didn't want to make sure I miss anything. So there's an old method. It's slow, but it is tried and true. I'll mention it first. It's not the preferred way, but it's just simply setting aside money from your 9-to-5 job, right? If you're a new investor, you probably don't have this huge portfolio of real estate and assets, and you're not going to just have, $100,000 laying around. If you do, then that's great. It's time for you to start investing right now. But most people, they have a 9-to-5, they have bills, they have things to pay. So what can you do to, as an older method, is you can just save, 5, 10, 15% of your monthly income, kind of set that aside every single month. And, it might take you a few years, but that's definitely a possibility. But the best ways, let's really talk about the best ways that you can find this money, because you're not going to go rob a bank. You're not going to go to Vegas, hopefully, and gamble all your money away. So what is the best ways that you can find money? Well, you can get other investors to invest in you. You can get private lending, hard money loans. You can combine that with going to the bank and getting a loan. You can find enough money to get your down payment, to renovate the house if you have to put any money to, paint or floors, or if it's an extensive project. There's lenders out there, private lending. All these things are great options at the beginning of your journey. These aren't things that are going to be a forever thing. You're not going to sit there forever and use these, but this is how you get started. So once you do get, a good bit of properties built up through this method, let's say you get a hard money loan to get the down payment, and then let's say you can get the bank to fund the rest of this investment. Once you do that, maybe 4, 5, 6 times, hopefully you'll have, if you do it right, you'll have enough equity built up to where you can actually start pulling the equity out of all these houses, all these townhomes, these apartments, and you can start buying other properties with your equity. That is the beauty of real estate, is you build up these portfolios of a whole bunch of equity. You take that equity, you do what's called a cash out refinance, and now you could just keep using your equity to buy these properties. And at that point, you're not using your own money. You're just using the banks and other people's money to help you fund your real estate. So those are the best ways. Now, I'm sure there's going to be, one-off niche ways that you can do it, but those are going to be the best ways to get started. So question number 2, and again, if you have any questions about number 1 and you feel like, hey, I need a little bit more explanation, definitely put it down in the chat. Let me know exactly what your question is, and hopefully I can explain it a little bit more at the end. So the second question is, how do you find these real estate deals? That is a question where it can seem like a professional, someone who's been doing this for a while, just goes out and all of a sudden they just find 5-6 deals, and it seemed like it took them like no time at all. But that's not the case. That's not what really happened. So let me kind of walk you through exactly how you're going to find these deals. So it does take work. It does take research. There's a few tools that I like to use. And I'm going to switch over and show you exactly some of the tools that I use and resources to help me find my real estate deals. So this first one is a huge website. I love this website so much. It's called Property Radar. This website is going to help you find those deals. This one is going to be a phenomenal resource. It's got all the information about properties that you could ever need. It tells you the mortgages, if there's any loans. It could tell you the person's name. It could tell you what the house is sold for. This is a great resource and website for those who aren't who aren't licensed agents and don't have access to the MLS. So this is one. Now, I'm not going to go through all of Property Radar. I could be here for hours talking about this, but this is one great resource. A second resource that I use locally and you could definitely use is a map of your area. For me, it's the city of Baton Rouge. This map, and it's the tax assessor's map basically, it's going to give you everything you need to know about a location. It's going to tell you the subdivision. It's going to tell you how many houses are in a subdivision. As you can see, as I scroll in, it tells you the plots, how big pieces of land are. This is going to tell you if something's in foreclosure. You're going to be able to confirm the foreclosures, making sure that stuff is actually being foreclosed on. So just another great website. And speaking of foreclosures, this other website is the sheriff's office website. This is where I'm going to go to be able to find all the real estate foreclosures. So when I come here, I can go into the foreclosure list, and if my computer would hurry up, I can come in here and I can see real estate that is going to be auctioned off, I think up to 6-7 months out. So I can start planning houses that I'm going to go look at now. So it doesn't want to load, but make sure you know in your local area where all the foreclosures are done, because this is a great way to find amazing deals. Another way is going to be HUD. HUD is the Housing for Urban Development. This is the FHA loans run by the government. When FHA loans are foreclosed on, they don't go through a normal foreclosure process. This is the process they go through. This is more of a traditional real estate sales where you have agents, you have a selling agent, and then you have a buying agent. Not just anyone can buy from HUD. A broker, licensed broker, has to actually register. So if you want a HUD home, there's nothing wrong with it. You just have to find an agent to buy one of these. And then lastly is, if you're a licensed agent, obviously the MLS is going to be a huge resource, because the MLS is going to have deals on there all the time. Some people think that when you put the house into the MLS, it's got to be full price. There's no deals to be made, which is not true. So definitely remember those resources, because those are the 5 that I use. Those are the 5 that I love using to help me find deals. Now, what goes into finding a deal, That's a little bit different. That's where you're going to have to go to my channel under the playlist for investing, because I have several videos that talks about how to find the right deal with an investment property. So let's move on to the third question. This question, this is a fantastic question. When I saw this, I had a huge list of questions that I was thinking about presenting. This one right here kind of stood out to me because I hear a lot of people ask this, but it's a very simple answer. So the question is there a credit requirement to buy an investment property? The simplest answer is no. There is no credit requirement to buying an investment property. You see, a bank doesn't really care too much if you as a person can pay your bills. They do, but they don't. The biggest thing that they're worried about, the biggest thing that a lender is worried about when lending you money against an investment property is, can that tenant pay that mortgage? Is that property going to cash flow enough to where if you're without a tenant for 1, 2, 3 months, you can actually pay, and that you can have enough reserves to pay that mortgage? That's really what the lender cares about. That, and they care about cash. If you have cash and assets and you put enough down, they really don't care what your credit is like. But with the same token, having good credit can definitely help you get into a better interest rate, and it does make you look a lot more favorable to those lenders. All right, so I'm starting to see, I see a question that came in. Let me look at that question real quick. So again, if y'all have any questions, please feel free to put that down in the chat. So the question that I see so far is, what is a hard money loan? Great question. So a hard money loan is just a very simple loan that is geared towards real estate investors who are purchasing houses mainly to fix and either flip or fix and renovate. So a hard money loan is usually done by like a third party lender, sometimes a bank, but usually there are lenders that specialize in these type of loans. And it's very simple. You want a certain amount of money, they'll run the numbers, make sure that that house, has enough room for like an equity for you to be able to get that. You get the loan, there's a set rate, there's a set term, maybe it's a 6-month or a 9-month term that you have to pay that back. You get the loan. Sometimes they'll do it in installments. If it's a large amount, they'll do it in installments, especially if you're doing like a full renovation of a house. And then, they'll be checking on you. And then at the end of your project, you refinance it with the bank, get a normal conventional loan, and then you pay back the hard money loan. The pros with that is they don't really care what your credit is. They just want to know you have a lot of money and a lot of cash, or you have a house that has no mortgage. The cons for that, and I'm sure you can imagine, higher interest rates. Sometimes their fees are higher. So it's a good resource when you first start out, investing, but it's not a resource that you want to maintain as you get, deeper into your investing career. So great question. So let's move on to the fourth question. Now, this fourth one I love because there's been a lot of talk in the news, over the past few years that, taxes and people don't pay taxes, and people always want to know, how do the wealthy not pay taxes? Well, this is how they do it. So the question is are there any tax benefits to rentals? Absolutely, without a doubt, yes. So some of the best and most wealthiest people in the world, they leverage real estate to make sure that they don't pay taxes, but they can stay wealthy. So let me give you some examples on exactly how they can do this. So before I say that, I want to make sure everyone knows that there's two types of income. Basically, there's a little bit more, but the two main ones that we're going to talk about, two main sources of income for real estate. You have your cash flow, which is like your rental income, and then you have your equity, right? So equity is gained when the property you have gains in value, and also when you pay down that mortgage. So the goal is your value is here, but then over the course of maybe a couple years, it starts to go up. And also while it's here, you're paying down your mortgage. So that gap, in theory, it should get larger and larger as you go. So the rental income, yes, that can be taxed. Now there's ways around not having to pay taxes, and there's ways around it. Work with a CPA. I'm not going to give you tax advice for obvious reasons. I'm not a tax person. Work with a tax person to figure out how to do it the best way. But the big one is your equity, because that's where a majority of your wealth is going to be built, is in the equity in your real estate. So how do you get away with, let's say you have $300,000 of equity, how do you honestly get away with not paying that in taxes? Because if you collect 100,000, 200,000 in taxes and you're in a certain bracket, the IRS can hit you for 50%. And that's a lot. Why would you want to give away free money? I just talked about that in one of my last videos. Don't give away free money. So there are tons of tax codes that have been put into law that allow people to legally move money around to not have to pay taxes. So let's say you sell a house, right? You have a property and it's worth $400,000 and you have $200,000 worth of equity, right? So you sell it for $400,000. Now you have $200,000. But what do you do with that? Well, one option is you could just collect that money, and that's exactly where you get taxed. It's called capital gains. You will get taxed 50% probably if you have a high enough tax bracket. So you really only made $100,000. $100,000 is a lot to lose. So what do you do instead? Well, before you close on that property, you talk to the title attorney and you say, hey, I want to do a 1031 tax exchange. 1031 tax exchanges are going to be your best friend moving forward, because this is going to be the way you get out of paying taxes legally. So let me kind of talk about how a 1031 tax exchange will work. So you go to sell that piece of property, right? It's worth $400,000. You sell it for that. You have $200,000 of equity. You're going to do a 1031. The law says that when you sell that property and you want to 1031 it, you have to buy one or more properties at the same time that is worth at least or more what you just sold. So you just sold something for $400,000. So the next property or the next 2 or 3 properties that you buy has to be worth at least $400,000 or more. It can definitely be worth more, but the minimum is what you just sold it for. So there is a time frame though. Within the first, I think it's like 45 days, you have to identify 3 properties, and then you have 180 days to buy those properties. So you would want a 1031 and you want to start looking before you sell, obviously, before you get into that closing, go to the closing. You want to have those properties identified to make the process smoother. So that is how you can get away from taxes, and that's not even the big picture. So here's going to be probably one of the biggest and best tax advantages and tax benefits to real estate. If you do this enough, and let's say you get into some properties, and let's say you have, 10 properties and all together they're worth $1 million. But let's say you only have a mortgage on all of your properties totaling up to $400,000. Well, you have $600,000 in equity. So what do? Well, this is where having the knowledge of real estate comes in handy. You're not going to sell those properties because they're cash flowing. You're going to go to the bank and say, hey, I want to do what's called a cash out refinance. You're going to take any amount of money they'll give you. Let's just say it's $80,000 that you want. You can take that $80,000. You can buy whatever you want. If you need a new car, if you want to buy more real estate, if you want to pay off a credit card bill, whatever it is, you can pay for it. Here's the tax benefit. Because it's a loan and it is considered debt, it is never going to be taxed. That is probably the best part of the whole thing. And that's how the wealthy stay wealthy. They will go to the bank and they will borrow money against their own assets, specifically real estate, to buy whatever they want. It could be to buy a house. It could be to buy another car. It doesn't matter. So hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully you all get that. So are there tax benefits? Absolutely. So, all right, let's moving on to question number 5. So again, just a reminder, if y'all have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat. If you are watching this after the fact, recorded on YouTube, and you have questions, feel free, put it down below. I'd love to answer your questions. If anything didn't make sense to what I was talking about and you want to hear more, definitely put it down in the chat and I'll answer it. So question number 5. Now, there's so many questions that, we could talk about. Number 5 is honestly where you could be made or you could break your entire operation. You could lose so much money in this 5th question. How do I find people to help me renovate or to do simple work on my properties? I can't tell you, I've personally been there. Anyone who's been in real estate, investing for any period of time, I guarantee you they have had some experience with a bad contractor, electrician, a plumber, roofer, whatever it is. Someone has messed up something and you just look at them like, really? That had to happen? So how do you go about finding good people to do good work? Well, this is one of those things where unless you already know someone in your area who is doing this type of work, if you have a good friend who, let's say they're in construction, or if you have a friend who maybe does real estate investing, maybe you have connections already, that's where you would want to start. But if you go into this, I'm going to assume you have no experience and you have no contacts, you haven't built up your network yet. You're going to have to trial and error it and go out and search. Now, there's great websites like Angie's List, even Google, that'll give you, 4 or 5 star ratings. You can look at what people say about them. There's the Better Business Bureau. Sometimes certain places get those accreditations, which is nice. But sometimes you're just going to have to go through trial and error. And there is a saying that if you want cheap labor, expect cheap results. If you want to pay someone hardly anything to do your roof, expect it to leak. Expect for a 5-mile-an-hour wind to take it right off. But if you spend good money, now I'm not saying you should overpay for anything, but if you spend the right amount of money, if you get 4 or 5 estimates, and let's say 3 of the 4 are all within the same range, well then start looking at those reviews because they're not overcharging you. So that's honestly the best way to do it, is trial and error. And you'll start to get a good feel. Once you do this enough times, you start working with painters and carpenters and plumbers, electricians, and you start working with different ones. You'll see, okay, who's always on time, who promises to do something and actually follows through, who calls you and says, you know what, I can't do this. Let me just be honest with you. And you'll start to weed out the ones who aren't good. You'll start to understand, this group right here, this is the ones I keep. This one over here, these are the ones I just let them go. So hopefully that all makes sense. Now, I don't want to bore you guys with all the details of how contractors and all that stuff work, but just trust me when I say it takes a lot of trial and error. My very first deal that I ever did, my very first flip, it was something that was massive. It was probably way too much for me to handle. It was a massive house, had like a pool. It was crazy. It was beautiful. I had a lot of fun. I learned a lot. But through that experience, I learned and gained so much more that money just simply can't get you. It's the knowledge and the experience of going through something. So hopefully that all makes sense. Hopefully that wasn't too confusing. So I appreciate everyone so far. I just recently crossed over the 250,000, that'd be nice, 250 subscriber mark, which I'm super thankful for, being a smaller channel, trying to grow. It means a lot when I get the views and the likes and the comments. So I definitely appreciate everyone. Again, if you have any questions, if anything didn't make sense, if something was confusing, if you just want to talk about real estate, put it down in the chat. Hopefully, my goal is to make real estate easy for everyone. So hopefully this was good. Hopefully people understood things. So with that, I'm gonna look in the chat one more time. Awesome. Don't see any questions. So again, thank y'all so much. Hope y'all have a great evening, and I will see y'all later.